Hello YouTube. Underwater Special Forces of Russia is a book about serious people and real exploits. There are no fictional stories, embellished facts, and there are no fakes in it. The author, who himself stood at the origins of the Soviet Naval Special Forces, described the long path of the formation of the Underwater Special Forces, and the heroes of the book by Vitaly Pashits are military reconnaissance divers, Marine Special Forces who have operated in almost all the seas and oceans of the Earth. The book is unique in that it provides detailed information about the weapons, equipment, and combat training of special purpose divers and Spetsnaz, and also a little bit about UFOs and extraterrestrials. I continuously research history of the armed forces of the Russian Empire, the Soviet Union, and now Russian Federation, and their encounters with unidentified flying objects and unidentified submersible objects. You can see my work in the books that I co-authored with British ufologist Philip Mental, and in my videos. Today I will tell you about a very interesting episode that took place in the 1970s and witnessed by most capable Soviet Marine Special Forces, Marine Spetsnaz. Морской Spetsnaz. Please understand, as in other cases, very few people in the countries outside of Russia and Russian sphere of interest know of this. And very few people in Russia know about this case too. But some do. Let's start with Vitaly Georgievich Pashits. The events I will discuss were described in the book about the history of the Soviet Special Forces, and it was written by Captain of First Rank Pashits. It was the Baku Naval School, next to which the secret unit under the command of Vitaly Pashits was located. For many years, Soviet Baku in Azerbaijan had been the center of education of the elite of the armies of Africa and the Middle East, cadets from 32 countries of the Arab world, Cuba, and other Latin American countries, as well as the Warsaw Pact countries like Bulgaria, East Germany, were trained in this military unit and became officers, commanders, and creators of special forces units in their homelands. 5 Germans who were citizens of the USSR also served in this unit. They were from the German settlement in Kazakhstan. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, they all left for Germany. And of course, the main contingent of trained special forces was recruited from among the best recruits from all over the Soviet Union. So, I assume that the author would be known to those in the West who had followed developments in the USSR, and if they read his book, they would have learned something about UFOs and attitude of the Soviet Armed Forces Command to this phenomenon. Let's now introduce this story to the general population of the planet. Okay? Pashits became the commander of this unit, and before heading one of the most elite military units in the USSR, he became one of the most authoritative specialists in the area, in the field of Marine Special Forces. Pashits is a participant of the Victory Parade on Red Square in Moscow in 1945. That's to commemorate the crushing of Nazi Germany. And he was awarded the Order of the Red Star and 19 combat medals and state awards. After graduating from the Leningrad Naval School, Pashits served in the Baltic, where he created an exemplary school for training underwater special forces. In 1969, the General Staff of the Navy entrusted him with the creation of a unit for the training of special forces of the so-called friendly countries for the Soviet Union, and Pashits insisted on stationing it in the Caspian Sea, next to the Caspian Higher Military Naval Command College. He himself entered the college in 1943 and his fellow students were future Soviet vice admirals, and later the graduates of the college were ex-minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation Yevgeny Primakov, Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Navy Admiral Chernovin, ex-ambassador of Russia to the United States Yuli Vorontsov, and many future admirals, pride of the USSR Navy in the 1980s and 1990s. And by the way, as part of the base ships, the captain visited Poland, Germany, Cuba, Indonesia, and other countries, I am sure, on special missions. Pashits knew the Caspian coast perfectly well and proved its advantage over the Black Sea coast. The shelves of the Russian, Azerbaijani, and Turkmen sections of the Caspian coast were used for the military exercises. The ideal base is, for exercises at sea, in the mountains, in the Karakum Desert, in the Nabran and Talish mountains, and of course on the islands of the Baku archipelago. In various conditions of the Caspian basin, Pashits worked out the methodology of conducting classes and exercises to create a universal special forces fighter. The engineering and diving training ground of the unit was located 6 kilometers from the coast of Wolf Island. Many students of Pashits eventually became admirals and generals of their national armies, and they still remember with gratitude the skill lessons they received on the shore of the Caspian Sea. Many of them were in demand even after the USSR ceased to exist. While Pashit's method in 1970s raised objections, why should the Marine Special Forces train in the mountains, in the forest? Well, now it is relevant. Russia is creating rapid reaction troops, the basis of which, according to the commander of the airborne forces, Colonel General Vladimir Shamanov, should be airborne troops. Paratroopers have been fighting according to the rules of hybrid wars for a long time. Previously, the Special Forces brigades of the armed forces were subordinate to the main intelligence directorate of the General Staff, and the Marines were subordinate to the Commander-in-Chief of the Navy. In 2015, Russian armed forces came to what Pashits created in the Caspian Sea in 1970, Universal Special Forces. Today, this is a global trend. Airborne paratroopers and Marine Special Forces should be like communicating vessels. Pashits served until January 1983, after which he retired to the reserve, but he never stopped working. In 1992, after the collapse of the USSR, the commander of the Caspian Flotilla invited Vitaly Georgievich Pashits to the post of the head of the Operational Intelligence Department. I am telling you this so you understand the quality of eyewitnesses. So bear with me. For 8 years, Pashits was engaged in training national personnel in this field. He passed away in 2013, but is well remembered in Russia and Azerbaijan. His son was a Russian Navy officer, and his grandson is a submariner in the Russian Navy. Some brief comments before I start reading the most dramatic excerpt from the book. The white TASS means top secret and for official use only, and TASS is the press agency of the USSR. Some of the names like Azhaja, Chernovin, and Domyslovsky you will find reference in my book, Russia's USO Secrets. Now, the 561st Separate Maritime Reconnaissance Station of the Special Intelligence of the Navy, Military Unit 10617 Parusnaya, Baltic Navy, Kaliningrad area, Parusnoye settlement. Brief history. In June of 1953, the GRU, or Main Intelligence Directorate of the General Staff of the USSR Armed Forces, decided to form 7 special-purpose Marine reconnaissance stations. Separate Marine reconnaissance stations, at first, they were called Separate Marine Reconnaissance Divisions of Light Reconnaissance Divers, combat swimmers of special intelligence designed to conduct operations of special importance. This is important in itself for those who follow my research and understand the importance. Now, let's begin and hear what Captain Pashits encountered. I'll read from his book. During the entire period of the existence of the Special Forces Unit in the Caspian Sea, we, along with performing the main task of training special agent groups, we did a lot of work to maintain our reconnaissance groups in constant combat readiness. The excellent climatic conditions of the Caspian Sea theater allowed us to conduct combat training all year, and we used it 100%. The presence of a part, of the supply ships, favorable conditions for recreation for divers, high-calorie food supplemented with gifts of the Caspian Sea, plus autonomous additional power supply issued during multi-day exits or missions. They allowed us to break away from the base for long periods and work out elements of combat training in various areas of the Caspian Sea. Willy-nilly, we had to plan our combat training closer to sunset and devote most of our time to night training. Of course, the temperature differences had its own plus for us, but nevertheless, despite all the difficulties, we had to swim during the day, and the reason for this was the following circumstance. In July 1976, I was unexpectedly called at night to the flotilla headquarters, where the task was to immediately begin examining the underwater part of the large island of Kara Ada, located at the entrance to the port Begdash, for the detection of an underwater base, which could be used by ultra-small submarines, for example, those of Iran. Next, it is necessary to check the area of the coast from the big island of Kara Ada to the north to Cape Suez for the same purpose. The order has been given. It's not subject to discussion, even though it was on the tip of the tongue. Where did they come from, these ultra-small submarines? There is one in Iran, an Italian 5X-404, which they either bought or rented from Pakistan for a while. The remaining 3 Pakistani ultra-small submarines were in Karachi. Iran has been trying to transport it to the Caspian Sea for a long time. It doesn't work by rail, the tunnel doesn't allow it. It is possible to use highways, but you need to adjust the trailer to the height of the tunnel. However, everything is possible. But less than a day had passed, and at that time we were preparing for a voyage when a message came from the same Begdash that in the area of the small island of Kara Ada, the head of the city's rescue station noticed an extraterrestrial who, finding attention to himself, turned to flight, and he moved with 7-foot steps. He got into a canoe-type boat, rowing hard, headed towards the big island of Kara Ada. The rescuer rushed after him on his progress boat with 2 outboard motors Whirlwind, but did not catch up. He told me these details himself at the meeting. In a word, events unfolded with kaleidoscopic speed, and we had to hurry in order to solve these enigmas. I hope the reader has not yet had the idea that the author of the notes in his declining years has fallen into fantasy. No. As I say in my heart, this is the truth and nothing but the truth. In a word, our preparations were brief, and by the end of the day, we left for our destination with 2 boats, a communication cutter vessel and a diving marine boat. But the events followed us during the crossing in the sea, and what news! Somewhere about 23 hours, we were approaching Zhiloy Island, and I was called to the bridge by the commander of the communication cutter vessel, Midshipman Ivan Petrovich Solovey. There were also officers, midshipmen, petty officers, and sailors. The commander drew my attention to a bright dot that was approaching us from the depths of the universe, and everyone on the bridge felt some kind of depressed state as it approached. After a moment, it abruptly changed direction and disappeared. The helmsman noticed that the magnetic compass was agitating all this time. The compass card was clearly restless, but with the disappearance of the dot, it calmed down. Later, we checked the compass corrections. They did not differ from the tabular ones. The gyro compass behaved normally. Frankly, I myself felt some discomfort watching that dot, but with its disappearance, everything fell into place, and we arrived safely in Bagdash. The reconnaissance divers who were on the bridge at that ill-fated moment told me that they periodically observed this, standing watch at outdoor posts in the part of the north of the sky, but they do not attach importance, although they experience a depressing feeling. In Bagdash, when I met with the Chief of Staff of the Red Banner Caspian military flotilla, Rear Admiral Viktor Mikhailovich Buinov, I casually told him about the UFO I had seen in the sea. He grinned and asked if I had too much to drink before the trip. In short, I did not share what had happened with anyone else. But these were the years where the events related to appearance of UFOs, about the alleged meetings of the population of various countries and continents with extraterrestrials and other anomalous phenomena, were very actively covered in the wide general press. Looking ahead a little, I want to tell you that somewhere at the end of August 1976, the commander of the flotilla, Vice Admiral Leonid Danilovich Ryabtsev, suddenly gathered all the commanders, deputies for the political unit, chiefs of staff of formations and units in a conference hall, where he introduced us to the representative of the USSR Academy of Sciences, Reserve Officer V. Azhaja, who had arrived from Moscow. Azhaja's message was sensational for all of us. He began it by reading out a message from the White House, in which it was reported that the Prime Minister of Iran, addressing to the Chairman of the Council of Ministers of the USSR, A.N. Kosygin, he asked to explain an unforeseen incident that occurred at the bottom of a military airfield near Tehran, when fighter pilots returning from flights found a device similar to a saucer, and near it 3 huge people allegedly dressed in high-altitude suits. They hurriedly climbed up the ladder into the saucer, and a moment later the saucer took off without a sound. With great speed it accelerated. The alarmed jet fighters tried to unsuccessfully approach the saucer, and realizing that this was impossible due to the speed difference, launched air-to-air missiles. However, to the amazement of the pilots, the missiles turned off when approaching the target and continued to fly in a straight line. Then the saucer, having had fun with the fighters, disappeared at an incredible speed. Further, V. Azhaja gave several more examples of the appearance of UFOs. In particular, in the report of the head of intelligence of the Pacific Fleet, Rear Admiral V. A. Domyslovsky, who reported the discovery of a huge UFO mothership and several small saucers that took off from under the water on board of the mothership and then dived again, etc. Moreover, knowing me as the former chief of staff in Parusny, Azhaja, with whom we were familiar from the days of the Frunze College, showed me a sheet on which the admiral's signature was placed and asked me to certify it. Of course, I recognize it, so he misspelled the doubts of those present, and then for 2 hours he amazed us with such messages, while presenting written confirmations. And here the Chief of Staff of the Red Banner Caspian Military Flotilla, Rear Admiral Viktor Mikhailovich Buinov, reported on our observations during the sea crossing in the area of the Zhuloy Island, and the commander added that the second secretary of the Caspian Regional Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union had already told him something similar about the appearance of luminous dots in the northern part of the sky. But he, at that time, attributed it to the ardent female imagination. Ajaja asked for these observations, and they were recorded in the navigation and watch logs of the boats to submit in official manner to the main headquarters of the Navy for the Academy of Sciences of the USSR. At first, all this was talked about in the entire flotilla and the Caspian Higher Military Naval Command College. But after some time passed, the head of the Hydrographic Department of the USSR Ministry of Defense, Admiral Rasokho, arrived in the Banner Caspian Military Flotilla, and speaking at the college, loudly declared that he would not listen to such nonsense from now on. Well, I had already begun to forget about all the conversations related to UFOs when I suddenly received communications from the intelligence department of the General Staff of the Soviet Navy and a demand to immediately send an extract from the navigation log of the communications cutter vessel about the phenomena observed on that ill-fated night near the Caspian island of Zhuloy. That's how they reacted to all the anomalous phenomena back then. But soon after, there was an instruction to have special logs on ships, on board of ships and boats, for making such observations in them. So that's what the captain described in his book. So my audience, you're the first in the West, or wherever you are listening from, to hear this detailed account of the UFO and extraterrestrial encounter in the Caspian Sea. Of course, it would be nice to know more details, but you see, the situation as it existed in the Soviet Union, UFOs and USOs were present, but their existence was denied. While later, the government started studying them, and I described these special programs that actually the Navy initiated. But this idiotic denial is not privy only to the Soviet Union. The situation was no better in the United States, United Kingdom, and so forth. Okay? They study, but they deny. Anyway, in my videos, you can find one more about the underwater humanoids of the Caspian Sea. I think you will like it. And I will come back to the book that Captain Pashits published when I discuss some other phenomena. He was a very observant person. But for now, I want to complete the video with this statement that Captain Pashits made in his book. The people of the ancient world, having named our planet Earth, did not imagine that it was 3/4 occupied by the ocean, which from time immemorial attracts with its mystery and frightens us with a formidable force, promising untold riches and promising great dangers. People have always succumbed to the hypnosis of the ocean. It resides in the depths of our subconscious, and as one of the primary elements, along with fire, air, lightning, we vaguely imagine that the moving mass of water, subject to the rhythm of the heavenly bodies, is the source of life and is closely connected with the origin of man and his fate. The centuries-old history of human society, its entire path to progress, is closely connected with the ocean, with the developments of its huge food, raw materials, fuel, and energy resources. However, in the centuries-old history of our planet, there are many catastrophic wars that often unfolded in the vastness of the world ocean. This is a direct threat to security from the ocean expanses. There is a clear paradox. The ocean is the blue mirror of the planet, the cradle of life on Earth, the only road connecting the peoples of various continents for centuries, and at the same time a threat to peaceful life. The ocean, from the cradle of life, becomes the arena of the most brutal battles, both on the surface and in the depths. The predictions of the great Leonardo, who destroyed the drawings of his submarine, came true. People are so evil and insidious that they would be ready to kill each other, even on the seabed. Now, I will add this. We mess with the oceans, and the extraterrestrials or descendants of ancient advanced civilizations that survived previous global disasters, they will mess with us. And as Leonardo da Vinci's submarines, well, what if not all of the drawings were destroyed? Or what if he saw prototypes in the storages of the 9 Unknown Society? We can only guess. I thank you for your attention to my work. I ask that you support my research, please. You will see the links in the description to this video, and I'll bring you more videos. Thank you. And please subscribe to my channel and all others that you know.